There's something uniquely horrible about trying to act normal when your entire emotional universe has just done a cartwheel. Logan was standing across the room, talking to his cousin like nothing happened. Like the kiss. The storm. The almost confession. Like it was all just a dream I made up with a romantic comedy brain glitch. I, meanwhile, was trying to decide if it would be weirder to fake a phone call or just hide behind the ficus in the corner. Spoiler, I chose the ficus. Not my proudest moment. But standing there, surrounded by velvet chairs and too many relatives, I had to admit the truth. I was falling for him. Not pretend falling. Not performance for Grandma falling. Actual, terrifying, heart-thumping, oh no, this is real falling. He looked over, saw me hiding, raised an eyebrow. I waved weakly like a broken windshield wiper. He started walking toward me, and my soul briefly exited my body. Hey, he said, calm as ever. You okay? Totally, I replied. Just bonding with this plant. We have similar emotional needs. He laughed, and I hated how much I liked the sound of it. We need to talk, he said. I braced myself. This was it. The end of the illusion. The moment he told me it was too much. That this fake thing had gone too far. But instead, he looked at me, really looked, and said, I meant it. I blinked. Meant what? The kiss. The storm. What I said. My heart did something it wasn't authorized to do. He stepped closer. I don't want to fake this anymore. I opened my mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Nothing came out but a small squeaky noise that might have been the word oh. He smiled. Not the charming, flirty smile he used on Grandma. The soft one. The real one. I like you, Harper. Not for the bit. Not for the story. I just do. And suddenly, all the panic and ficus hiding and emotional dodging felt pointless. Because the truth was, I liked him too. And maybe we were a mess. And maybe this whole thing started with the wrong bouquet and a man in a towel. But sometimes, the best beginnings are the ones you never saw coming. So I stepped forward, reached for his hand, and said the only thing that made sense. Then let's stop pretending. No one tells you what to do after you stop pretending. There's no manual titled, so you've accidentally fallen for your fake fiancé, now what? Because now it was real. And real is terrifying. Real means asking, what are we now? Real means texting goodnight and wondering if it sounds too needy. Real means lying awake, wondering if you imagined it all. The kiss, the look, the moment his hand found yours like it was built to fit there. And in our case, real meant brunch with Grandma Beatrice. Still fake engaged. Still allegedly moving in together. Still smiling through a lie, except the lie wasn't a lie anymore and suddenly I didn't know how to act. Brunch was at Beatrice's favorite place, a chandelier-heavy, quiche-obsessed cafe called Le Petit Fête, which I'm convinced is French for anxiety in pastry form. We sat across from her at a table so fancy it had 3 forks and a spoon I was afraid to touch. Beatrice sipped her tea like a queen judging a duel. So, she said, peering over her glasses, have you two picked a date yet? A date. I choked on my mimosa. Logan coughed like he had just swallowed a bee. We're working on it, he stammered. Of course, Beatrice replied, unconvinced. You will want a summer wedding, I assume. With your coloring, Harper, you will look washed out in winter. I blinked. Thank you. She smiled sweetly. Tell me again how you fell in love. Panic. Pure, unfiltered panic. Because we hadn't rehearsed this part. The real feelings part. The tell the woman funding your honeymoon how you fell for her grandson part. But Logan didn't miss a beat. He looked at me. Soft. Steady. And he said, I knew the second she handed me the wrong bouquet. My breath caught. Beatrice smiled. How poetic. I thought she was chaos in sneakers, he continued. And I was right. But I liked it. My heart officially packed a suitcase and moved into my throat. She made everything feel less beige. Oh no. I was in trouble. Because I couldn't tell if he was performing, or if this was real. But then I looked at him and saw something I hadn't seen before. Fear. The kind you only get when you are being honest. The kind that says, please believe me, even if I don't know what comes next. And just like that, I wasn't pretending either. I smiled at him. The kind of smile that doesn't need rehearsing. I fell in love, I said softly, somewhere between the lilies and the lavender ring. Beatrice teared up. Logan reached under the table and squeezed my hand. And somewhere in the middle of fake eggs, Benedict, and a very real confession, I realized something important. We weren't playing house anymore. We were building something. And for once in my life, I didn't want to run. The day after brunch with Grandma Beatrice, the sky was aggressively blue. One of those suspiciously cheerful skies that made it feel illegal to have complicated feelings. But I did. I had a whole circus of them. Because everything had shifted quietly but permanently, like someone had rearranged the furniture in my chest and forgotten to warn me. Logan had said things, real things, beautiful things, dangerous things, and worse, I believed them. So now I was sitting on his couch in pajama pants, cradling a mug of tea like it was an emotional support animal, wondering how on earth you transition from fake to real without combusting. Then he walked in. Still towel drying his hair. Still stupidly attractive. Still Logan. Morning, he said, like he hadn't shattered my defenses less than 24 hours ago. Hi, I replied, in the world's least casual voice. He paused. Looked at me. You okay? I considered lying. But then I remembered what we had said. What we meant. I don't know what this is, I admitted. Us. I don't know the rules anymore. He sat next to me. Close enough to feel the heat of him. Not close enough to fix it. There aren't any rules, he said quietly. That is the point. I'm not good at this, Logan. At what? Letting it be real. He looked at me like I was the only person in the room. The only person in the world. You don't have to be good at it, he said. You just have to want it. I stared at my tea. At the steam curling up like a whisper I couldn't quite hear. Then I looked at him, and for the first time I said it out loud. I want it. His breath caught. And I swear the whole apartment leaned in. Okay, he said. One word. One promise. Then he kissed me. No lightning this time. No chaos. Just warmth. Steady, grounding, terrifyingly gentle warmth. And I knew in that moment that I was all in. Even if I didn't know where this road led. Even if we got lost again. Because we'd already come farther than most people ever dare to go. And we weren't faking anything anymore. Love makes you do stupid things. Like, say, let's host a dinner when you have exactly one working pan, no dining table, and the culinary confidence of a distracted goldfish. But Logan had smiled at me, that soft, crooked smile that short-circuits my brain, and said, let's make it real. So now we were planning a very real dinner for 4 very real guests. Grandma Beatrice, Aunt Bev, Uncle Rick, and Claire. Yes, Claire. Because apparently, Logan thought inviting his ex to our We Are Actually in Love Now dinner was a power move. I thought it was an emotional demolition derby. Why are we doing this again? I asked, chopping vegetables I didn't recognize. He grinned. To prove we are the real deal. To who? Your grandma? The woman who cried over our fake lavender ring? To ourselves, he said, voice quieter. And just like that, I forgot how to be annoyed. Dinner was set for 7. At 6:43, I still had flour in my hair and a mild existential crisis in my chest. At 6:58, Claire arrived. Wearing red lipstick, 6-inch heels, and the energy of a woman who once got asked to leave a spin class for dominating the vibe. Harper, she said, air kissing the space near my ear. How brave of you to cook. I try, I replied sweetly. Not everyone has the courage to show up without being invited. She blinked. Logan choked on a grape. Then Grandma and the others came in, and suddenly it was chaos. The table was too small. The wine was too warm. The garlic bread was charred. It's rustic, I insisted. But then something strange happened. People laughed. Not fake polite laughter. Real belly-deep laughter. Even Claire cracked a smile when Uncle Rick accidentally drank from a candle votive and insisted it had notes of citrus. And somewhere between the slightly undercooked risotto and the story of how Logan once tried to rescue a cat that turned out to be a raccoon, I realized something. We weren't just convincing everyone else anymore. We were convincing ourselves that this was real. That it was messy and imperfect and sometimes burned around the edges, but it was ours. After dessert, store-bought, I'm not a miracle worker, Grandma stood up with a satisfied sigh. You two, she said, her voice soft and clear, are a perfect disaster. And I've never loved anything more. Claire gave me a look. Not jealousy, not judgment, something closer to understanding. Maybe even respect. And when she hugged Logan goodbye, she looked at me and said, "He's different with you." Then she left. And for once, I didn't feel like I was losing anything. Later, while we washed dishes and flicked suds at each other like children, Logan leaned over and whispered, "So brave, huh?" I rolled my eyes, but I was smiling. Because the truth was simple. Real love wasn't perfect. It was garlic-burned and laughter-stained and full of weird X's and awkward toasts, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. The first fight happened over toothpaste. Not the metaphorical kind, the actual toothpaste. Apparently, Logan squeezes from the middle of the tube like a chaotic goblin, and I, a perfectly reasonable person, prefer starting from the bottom. Like a civilized human being. "It's not that serious," he said, holding the mangled tube like it wasn't a personal attack on my soul. "It is structural integrity, Logan. It's minty goo. It doesn't need integrity." We stared at each other. I crossed my arms. He raised an eyebrow. Somewhere, a silent wind of domestic tension blew across our beige apartment. This wasn't really about toothpaste. It never is. It was about space. Boundaries. That weird part of a relationship where you are comfortable enough to get annoyed but not experienced enough to know how to argue without turning it into a disaster. "Okay," I said finally. "New rule. 2 tubes. Separate drawers." He blinked. "We are negotiating toothpaste treaties now." "Yes. And next, we're drafting the Great Blanket Agreement of 2025. He smirked. "That better include a cuddle clause." And just like that, tension diffused. Fight averted. Mostly. But it lingered. That weird shift. The way the air felt more breakable than usual. Because after the first real argument, you start to realize something deeper. Love isn't just butterflies and banter. It's maintenance. Effort. Showing up even when you're cranky and the other person uses 6 towels in one day and doesn't refill the Brita. Later that night, I was in bed, rereading a book I wasn't absorbing, when he knocked softly and poked his head in. He was holding something. 2 new toothpaste tubes. One labeled Harper Squeeze from the bottom only. The other Logan, Chaos Goblin approved. I burst out laughing. "Truce?" he said, climbing into bed. "Truce," I said, handing him the metaphorical olive branch, which, in this case, was my last gummy bear. We laid there in comfortable silence, brushing shoulders, the toothpaste on the nightstand like a peace offering from the universe. And I thought, this is what real looks like. Not fireworks. Not perfect dinners. Just 2 people who choose each other again and again, even in the small things. Even in the middle of the tube. Love has phases. There's the spark, fast and glittery, like striking a match in the dark. Then the warmth, steadier, deeper, like sunlight sneaking through a window in late afternoon. And then there's the weird phase no one talks about, the quiet. The kind where nothing dramatic happens. No exes. No fake dinners. No confessions under lightning skies. Just Tuesday. This was our Tuesday. No disasters. No surprises. Just Logan sitting at the table, tapping away on his laptop, glasses on, hair messy, drinking his 3rd cup of coffee like it owed him money. And me? Sitting across from him, pretending to answer emails while actually Googling if plants can feel neglected when you talk to other plants more. They can't.
But I'm not taking chances.
We hadn't kissed yet today. Not because we were mad, just because life was loud. The dishwasher was running. The neighbors were yelling about a lost parrot again. My tea kept getting cold before I could drink it. And still, it felt like something mattered in the silence. At one point, Logan looked up. "You always make that face when you are thinking too hard." I blinked. "What face?" He set his laptop aside, leaned forward, and pointed gently at the space between my eyebrows. "This one. Your do succulents have abandonment issues face." I laughed, embarrassed and seen all at once. "They might. Mine's definitely judging me," he said, glancing toward the windowsill. We both looked at the cactus he had named Steve. Steve did in fact look disappointed. Then something shifted, not big, but real. He reached for my hand across the table, laced his fingers through mine like it was instinct. No fanfare. No music swelling. Just touch. Connection. Warmth. "I like this," he said. "What, me worrying about emotional cacti?" He smiled. "No. This. Us. Existing." And there it was. The quiet part of love, not the fireworks, but the space in between. The toothbrushes in the same cup. The morning coffees and middle-of-the-night socks on cold toes. The nothing happened today, but I still wanted to be near you kind of love. And it hit me. The quiet wasn't empty. It was everything. Every couple has a thing. For some, it is hiking on Sundays. For others, it is bickering over board games or reenacting scenes from bad soap operas with too much commitment. For us, it became the market. The Saturday market, a bustling maze of sunflowers, sourdough, homemade candles that all smelled vaguely like anxiety, and an old man who played the accordion like it held his life's regrets. Logan loved it. I loved pretending I didn't, even though I secretly lived for it. It was where we could be ourselves without being watched. No grandma. No fake stories. No reminders of how this whole thing had started with tulips and towel-induced chaos. Just us. Our version of real. That morning, Logan insisted on pushing the cart, which meant we now had 3 types of cheese, 2 loaves of bread, and a bundle of eucalyptus I didn't ask for but was definitely not mad about. "I think you're secretly building a Pinterest board in real life," I teased. He shrugged. "Maybe I'm building a life. With aesthetic." I looked at him. Messy hair. Sunglasses. Stupidly handsome in that accidental catalog model way. And holding a baguette like it was a lightsaber. God help me, I was in too deep. We stopped at a flower stall full circle, I guess, and I expected him to move on. But he paused. Picked up a bunch of soft pink ranunculus and held them out to me. "Not tulips this time," he said, grinning. "Too soon?" I smiled. Took them. Felt that strange ache again, the one that comes with happiness that feels earned. We kept walking. And then, at a little stand that sold hand-painted mugs and existential poetry fridge magnets, I saw it. A small ceramic dish. Rough edges. Glazed in warm cream and copper tones. And in tiny handwriting across the side, it read, "Love isn't loud. It just never leaves." I picked it up without thinking. Ran my thumb over the words. Logan came over, peeking at the dish. "Too cheesy?" "Kind of," I said. "But the good kind." He bought it before I could argue, and now it sits in our kitchen, next to the olive oil and the chaos spread toothpaste, catching keys and gum wrappers and the occasional mint. It's not romantic in the obvious way, but it's ours, our thing. And I think that's what love becomes in the end. Not just grand gestures and dramatic speeches, but a market run, a mismatched bowl, a man who still chooses you, even when all you have done is show up in yesterday's hoodie with messy hair and a weird passion for succulents. That's the kind of love I want to keep choosing, too. You can tell a lot about a relationship by how it handles unexpected guests, especially when those guests show up unannounced. Especially when those guests are your parents. Yep. Mine. Standing at our door, smiling like a pair of suburban hurricanes. Surprise! my mom said, holding a casserole dish like it was an olive branch and not a symbol of emotional warfare. Your father had a conference nearby, she added, and we thought why not visit our daughter and her fiancé. There it was. The word. Fiancé. And suddenly I was sweating in places I didn't know could sweat. Logan appeared beside me, barefoot, holding a spoon and looking mildly alarmed. Hi, he said, charm dialing up instinctively. You must be Harper's parents. Come in? And just like that, the performance began again. Except this time it wasn't fake. Not really. But how do you explain a relationship that started with lies and somehow turned into the most honest thing in your life? You don't. You serve coffee. You sit politely while your mother asks about wedding venues. You watch Logan navigate your dad's intimidating silence with diplomatic grace and exactly one dad-approved handshake. You survive. Barely. Later, after dinner and 2 passive-aggressive comments about my untraditional path, I found Logan in the kitchen, washing dishes like they had personally offended him. You okay? I asked. He nodded. Your mom just asked if I planned to quit my job to focus on being a husband full-time. I told her I multitask. I winced. Sounds about right. He looked at me, then really looked, and his voice dropped. Why didn't you tell them? I knew what he meant. About us. About the fake beginning. About the real everything now. I bit my lip. Because if I tell them, it makes it real in a way I can't take back. And is that a bad thing? Silence stretched. I hated that I didn't have an answer. Not because I didn't know what I felt, but because I did. And I was scared of what it meant. That I wasn't playing anymore. That this wasn't temporary. That I might love him. I opened my mouth. But before I could speak, the doorbell rang. Another surprise? No. Just Grandma Beatrice. Because of course she showed up, dressed like a queen in cashmere and pearls. Oh good, she said, breezing in. The whole family is here. Let's talk wedding dates. I stared at Logan. Logan stared at me. And somewhere between my mother's casserole and Beatrice's perfectly arched eyebrow, I realized something. If we didn't tell the truth soon, it wouldn't just be fake flowers and lavender rings. It would be a real wedding. And that? That terrified me more than the truth ever could. You know that feeling when you are standing on the edge of a decision? Like the air is thinner, your skin is a little too tight, and everything around you is just waiting to see what you will do. That was me, for approximately all of Saturday. After the surprise parental ambush, I spent the morning reorganizing the pantry because apparently emotional dread now manifests as alphabetized spice jars. Logan gave me space. Too much space. He went on a walk. Did laundry. Read the same page of a book 3 times while pretending not to glance at me. We were circling each other like emotional landmines. Because the truth wasn't just looming anymore, it was knocking. Loudly. With Grandma Beatrice's perfectly manicured fist. And the thing is, I wanted to tell it. Not just to our families. To myself. I wanted to say this is how it started, but not how it ended. But there's a difference between wanting something and being ready for it. At 3:14 p.m., Logan finally broke the silence. He found me sitting on the kitchen floor, surrounded by a chaotic pile of mismatched Tupperware, looking like a woman who had just lost a very personal battle with a lid. He sat beside me. Quiet. Patient. Then softly. Do you regret it? I didn't ask what it meant. We both knew. The fake engagement. The first kiss. The lie that led to everything that wasn't a lie anymore. I stared at a cracked plastic container in my hand. No. I regret not knowing sooner. He exhaled, like he had been holding that breath since Tuesday. Then let's stop hiding. I looked at him. At this man who kissed me in thunderstorms and labeled toothpaste tubes for peace. At this man who saw me, really saw me, and stayed. But what if it changes everything? He smiled, a little sad. A little brave. It already has. And I knew he was right. The pretending was the lie. The quiet mornings and messy dinners and market flowers and late-night fights about blanket real estate, this was real. So we made a plan. To tell the truth. To come clean to Grandma, to my parents, to the world. To risk the fallout because the alternative was worse. Pretending to be in love when we already were. That night, Logan held my hand as we drafted a message for our families. Simple. Honest. No dramatic confessions or romantic comedy speeches. Just the truth, it started as a lie. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being one. And we hit send. Together. Then we sat in the dark, our shoulders touching, our hands still clasped like we were bracing for impact. But no storm came. No lightning. Just silence. And in that silence, something even scarier than fear took root. Hope. The quiet kind. The steady kind. The kind that stays. And we didn't say it out loud, not yet, but I felt it in the way he looked at me. Like he already knew what the final chapter would be. There are moments you don't realize are endings until they're already over. And then there are moments that feel like beginnings even when you're standing at the end of everything you thought you knew. This was both. We were back at Grandma Beatrice's. Same chandelier. Same velvet chairs. Same lemon-scented air that smelled faintly of judgment and meringue. Only this time we weren't pretending. We'd told the truth. About the bouquet. About the lie. About how somewhere between the awkward beginnings and all the almosts, we'd found something real. Beatrice sat at the head of the table, silent. Too silent. Claire was there too, oddly supportive, sipping tea like she wasn't the same woman who once tried to psychologically destroy me with lip gloss and passive aggression. My parents were confused but composed. Logan? Logan held my hand under the table like a lifeline. And I somehow felt steady. I see, Grandma said finally, after what felt like an entire century of silence. My stomach twisted. I braced for disappointment. For drama. For a tearful, "You've brought shame upon this family" monologue delivered with theatrical handkerchief dabbing. But instead she smiled. Softly, like she had known all along. "I always suspected something wasn't quite right with your story," she said. "No one falls in love over lavender rings and tulips unless they are in a Hallmark movie." She took a sip of her tea. "But I also saw how you looked at each other when you weren't performing." I blinked. "You knew?" "Darling," she said, eyes twinkling, "I invented fake dating. In the 60s. With a French sailor named Luc." Logan choked on his water. "I didn't care how it started," Beatrice continued, folding her hands. "I only care how it ends." She looked between us. "And I think this you two might actually be the real thing." My mother let out a tiny gasp, like Beatrice had just blessed our union with ancient magic. Logan turned to me, eyes wide, hopeful, a little stunned. And that's when I knew, really knew, that this wasn't the end of our story. It was the start of a better one. Later, after the chaos had died down and my parents left with 17 Tupperware containers and exactly 0 passive-aggressive comments, a record, Logan and I found ourselves back on the porch. Same porch where the storm had started it all. But this time the sky was clear. Stars instead of lightning. Peace instead of panic. "You okay?" he asked, brushing my hair behind my ear like it was just the most natural thing in the world. I nodded. "I think we just got unofficially re-engaged by a woman who once lied to the Queen about being royalty." "Sounds about right." I laughed. He was quiet for a moment. "Then, so what now?" I looked at him, at the man who once pretended to love me and somehow ended up actually loving me. And I said, "Now we stop making up the story." I leaned in, kissed him, and we start writing the real one. He smiled. That soft, real smile that never needed rehearsing. And under the stars, holding the hand of the man I accidentally fell in love with over flowers, fiction, and one very judgmental cactus, I felt it. The ending.